It's always whenever you go online. You never know if audio or video goes through.
Hello, welcome to Under the Meeple Light Show. And today's guest, we have Steiness, who is the game designer of Champions of Midgard, amongst many others. And we'll get him to introduce himself in just a moment. But if you're new to this show, you're not familiar, this is our final and third season of Under the Meeple Light Show, where we'll be presenting 10 random questions to our guests, which will come and be drawn from this bowl. Now, our guest has no idea what the questions are. Now, if you've been watching the series, you'll know that we chop and change the questions that come out, and this time it's completely different. We have 3 different types of questions. We have a yes or no questions. We have what phrase comes to mind when you hear a statement, and we have agree and disagree questions as well. So that'll be interesting to see how a guest copes with that, and there's a different style. And Ollie was on season 1. If you haven't already seen that, please do go to the playlist on the channel and look at season 1 Under the Meeple Lights, where you can find out his thoughts on some of the questions. Most of them relate to the board game industry, and it'd be great to hear from you at home what your thoughts are on some of these questions that come out. So enough of me yapping on. I would like to introduce you to Ollie. So Ollie, welcome.
Thank you, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here again.
And it's great to have you on again. And why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, like you said, I'm a board game designer. I live in Denmark with my wife, 2 boys and dog. And yeah, I'm full-time designing board games at the moment, which is quite fortunate, I think. I used to do computer games for many years professionally. And then on the side, I did the board games, including Champions of Midgard. But a couple of years ago, I jumped into it full time. So that's what I'm doing now. Always looking forward to the next project. And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I took your advice. I actually went out and got Champions of Midgard and the 2 expansions with it. So I'm yet to get it out and play it, but I am looking forward to it because it's highly acclaimed. A lot of people certainly highly rate it as well, particularly those who perhaps have enjoyed some of the similar games to Champions of Midgard. Will certainly enjoy that. Like Raiders of the North Sea, for example, should enjoy Champions of Midgard as well. So let's head into our questions, starting with our first one. Now, as I said, our guest has no idea. I have no idea what's coming out either. So let's go out the first one, Ollie, and see what we've got. So the first question is, we have an agree or disagree, statement. So board games these days are over convoluted. Do you agree with that statement or disagree?
Oh, that's a hard, yeah. What are the other questions, right? There are so many different board games. So it depends on which ones, I mean, but some are definitely, so I'll partly agree. Of course, I can't say every board game is overly convoluted. Some tend to be, some new Kickstarters maybe. I've seen some from mainly newer designers, I think, that where you, and I have been falling into that myself, where you keep on adding stuff to a game and forgetting to like stop and think that, oh wait, the core game has been drowning now in all these features. So I would agree to some of them, but yeah, like I said, it would be unfair of me to say that all board games are convoluted, of course.
And it's a true concept that people say. I remember I used to produce music, and less is more, because you get clarity on what's actually there in front of you if you don't put too many little elements into the game and you look at the core element of it and what functions and what works together. Because sometimes when you start adding more, yes, it adds that complexity, but sometimes it can make quite messy as well.
Yes, I think so, but also I am older now and a dad and with limited time, so I can't speak for my 20-year-old self, because back then, of course, games were different, but also I had more time to get deep into the games and the game experience. And maybe for some who has more time than a busy gamer dad will enjoy that it has so much stuff that just engulfs you and captivates you in that way. I can't speak for those, but for me, I like a quicker setup. and not too complex a game. Also, I'd like to remember the rules from session to session, and that could be hard if there are like 1,000 tiny bits and different components.
Yeah, it's a good point. The more complex it is, the more it's going on. You sometimes you have to reread the rule book. You haven't played it in a while, and that can be an onerous task itself. So you don't want to be doing that every time. So let's move into our second question or statement. So let's see what we come out this time. So number 2 is, what phrase comes to mind? Okay, so when tickets for a convention that you really want to attend run out, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
When what runs out? Sorry.
So you're looking forward to this convention, Ollie. You go online, it's sold out, no more tickets. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, disappointment. If there are no more tickets, I don't know what to do, man. Usually I only go to one convention a year, which is at Essen Spiel, and I buy that ticket as soon as it's possible, and it doesn't really run out, thankfully. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I guess there's not much to do unless you go online, of course, and try to beg somebody to sell you their tickets. But usually for Essen, it's usually not a problem. They take many attendees. So,
let's hope it doesn't run out.
Yeah.
I think if you really look at, the thing is, if you're really looking forward to a convention, there's so many out there that is always next year. So there's always an opportunity. So I think the frustration wouldn't be as much for some people, unless, of course, you're going with a group of friends and you're the only one without a ticket. I think then you'd be extremely frustrated and perhaps jealousy would kick in. But there we go. So let's move into question number 3. Let's see what comes out. And number 3, we've got a couple stuck there. There we go. So our third one is, and I think this is going to be a phrase one. So what phrase comes to mind when you hear this, Ollie? If a board game you designed receives an average Board Game Geek rating of less than 5 on average, what phrase comes to mind?
Probably some swearing. Well, I guess I would first and foremost be disappointed with myself, because the rating is usually based on many people, right? So do better. I would say to myself. That's a short phrase, of course. Me and or the publisher must have misunderstood something along the way, because of course that's not what you're aiming for when you publish a game. So I would go back to the drawing desk and reconsider not my career, but what went wrong, of course, and go in and analyze. And of course, Board Game Geek would help with that and tell me how it got so low of a rating.
It's quite a funny thing, ratings, because some people psychologically get sucked into, if it's not a certain rating, they won't touch the game. And I can get sucked into that as well. So when I go and buy a game, I look at the Board Game Geek rating, because that's key. Is it, it tells you, is a game actually good or is it really poor? But sometimes you can get stuck on, I'm not touching a game, it's below a certain level, but it might be an actual good game. And from my experience that, for example, those are rated 6, between 6 and 7 might be 5 at the 10 might be good, another 5 might be poor. So do you financially, fork out for the 10 to get the 5 at good, or do you stick to that higher level where you think that the vast majority are good games out of that 10 compared to the ones that are lower rating? So it's quite funny how ratings play a part in whether somebody purchases the game or not. And I think it's important not to get sucked into that sometimes, because you can get some good games that you might enjoy that maybe only have a rating at 6, but you might think, I'm going to rate that an A because I think it's really good.
Yeah, I agree. I also don't look too much on the ratings themselves. Obviously, there are so many other parameters you look for if this is a game for you. And also, Board Game Geek is not everything, right? Because it is a geeky site, of course, and you can see it's many people has disputed the ranking list, because it's only for certain types of geeks, and lots of games would have rated differently in different forums, probably. So like with other media, you have to go in with your eyes open and do your own interpretations as well. But I like that with Board Game Geek, that there is so many stuff and user reviews and videos and how to, and so much stuff now that you can get a pretty clear picture of the games you were potentially buying in there. But I wouldn't certainly not only look at the rating. But you say below 5, I think that's not a satisfying rating. So, but I don't care if it's a 7, 8, or 9. Actually, usually, but below 5, I would be cautious.
Well, if you get a 7 or an 8, that's pretty damn good, because that's a hard rating to get. So anything 7 or above is very impressive to get that in board game. But you've made a good point there. You don't want to get sucked too much into it, because non-hardcore gamers may rate a game its average of 5. They might give it an 8 or a 9 because that's their type of game. Whereas a hardcore gamer may say, well, to me, that's a 4 or a 5 because it doesn't have the depth of what I'm looking for. So you've got to be careful, haven't you, with the rating? Don't get sucked too much into it, is what I say. So let's move in to question number 4, or a phrase. Let's see what comes out, Ollie. So number 4 is a yes or a no answer. So will more game designers migrate from Kickstarter to GameFound in 2024?
I have no idea. I mean, I've not done any publishing myself. I spend all my energy on designing, so I really don't know anything about GameFound, or Kickstarter. I've been on Kickstarter, but not on GameFound, but only as a designer, not the administrator. So I have no idea. Probably yes, because it's I guess it's a great GameFound is growing as well. And Kickstarter, I guess they can't really grow more, at least in people's consciousness. Everybody knows Kickstarter, I guess. So yeah, probably people will try out something new if they get tired of certain aspects of Kickstarter.
Yeah, I think you'll see a kind of cross between two. You know, some people release it first in Kickstarter, then GameFound for the second batch of release. So we see a lot of that happening. And there will be some exclusives to GameFound. So I think, you know, we'll see that more and more as, you know, through the years. I don't think it'll get as big as Kickstarter, because Kickstarter is so big that I think, you know, that's the kind of granddaddy when it comes to crowdfunding. And I don't think GameFound will get there, but I think it will grow and develop. And I think it will get to a decent status for providing a good platform to release a board game, certainly for self-publishing. So we'll see. We will see. We don't have a magic ball. So let's see what our next question is. We're on to number 5. And we've got an agree or disagree statement. So, in the near future, a great war will significantly reduce the capabilities of getting new games out over a long period of time. When I mean a long period of time, I'm talking in excess of a few years. So we'll be, unfortunately, stuck into digitalization where we won't be able to get anything released physically due to an epidemic or some kind of great war that will come upon us. That's if we're still alive, of course, at that point.
That's some grim thoughts there. I hope to disagree, because that would be horrible. It's not entirely unlikely, unfortunately, right? With the way things are now in this unstable world. I think the entertainment, depending on the degree of severity, of course, but the entertainment industry will find its way to cope. And but yeah, it will. A great war would definitely hamper it. So if the question is if the great war will happen, I don't know. I hope not. So I'll disagree. I'll stay optimistic. So
I think there'll be a time, and I think if you look at history, there's always some major war at some point, and I think it will happen again. To what extent, especially with technology advances, I think there'll be a point where it won't be humans in the battlefield. It'll be, you know, the technology advances of robots. And how far and how much power do governments want to create this war? And are they going to come to some amicable agreement to live peacefully? So there are a number of questions whether it will happen. And on your side, I hope it does not happen, and somebody can have some common sense to live peacefully, so we can actually continue with our lives without having to worry about what on earth is going on higher above and the possibilities of a great war destroying us. So fingers crossed. Let's move on to the next one. Hopefully we've got a happier question.
Yes.
We're on to number 6. And our 6th question is, what phrase comes to mind when your partner wants to play the same game again for the 20th time in a row?
In a row. Well, I don't think 20 times is a lot. Depend if it's like in the same day or weekend, it's probably let's do something else, really. But I think that's fine. I mean, as a concrete example, we've been playing lots of Splendor down at our home. That's a really popular game. We probably play that 50 times or more. So that would be okay. Then we don't have to reread or read new rules. We can just relax. So I think it's okay. 20. I mean, like I said, if it's the same day or weekend, it will probably be too much. But that's not going to happen anyway. We have a very active dog and 2 kids, so we're not going to play anything 20 times in a row. No time for that.
Yeah, it's a good point though, because I think some people get stuck into to get a new game, they want to play the new game rather than playing one game maybe 10 to 20 times, get to know it really well, and get to enjoy it. Because you think about it, when you get a computer game, you don't buy 20 computer games and play them 20 different games. Well, most people don't. You kind of invest your time in that 1 or 2 computer games to get the best out of it, your money's worth. And it's, and it's about that kind of psychological effect of just because you get a new game doesn't mean you have to play it straight away. It's enjoying what you've already got and trying to get as much out of it as possible, and as long as you still get that enjoyment and fun factor. And that can be important because you don't want to be wasting money for the sake of wasting money for a new game that comes in. So I'm kind of with you. I don't think ads create scraping. I remember during the pandemic, we played Small World online. I must have played that, I've lost count, well over 50 times. I've got to the point, it was actually one of the very first modern games that I got. I don't want to play it again for a while because I've played it so many times. So I think there comes a point where you think, I've had enough of that. Let's move on to something else. So let's move on to our next question, Ollie. Let's see what comes out. So we're on to number 7. And this is another one. What phrase comes to mind when a Kickstarter game you backed is delayed by 3 years?
3 years, that's a long time. Well, if I'm lucky, I've forgotten about it already. But 3 years is a long time. Well, then I would certainly think something went horribly wrong, because 3 years, I mean, they're always delays, right? I would expect games to be delayed. But as soon as we get, I mean, I would expect them to be late. I would be okay with them being delayed up to a year, I think. At least for a first-time developer, or if something, a pandemic or something crazy happened, another ship got stuck in the Suez or whatever. But 3 years, I would say I should react on it or call it a loss, because it's probably not going to come. Because that's too long. Something must have gone wrong. Somebody, they took the money and ran, maybe, or something burned. I don't know.
Yeah, which back days are rare occurrence. But I remember it's Pursuit of Happiness. We backed it on Kickstarter, and it was delayed for about 2 years. Now there was outrage for people, and I was because it was Kim who backed it, and she showed me the comments, and it was for a Christmas present. And I was like, I don't care if it was 2 years delayed. That doesn't bother me. I've got plenty of other games to enjoy. And the outrage in the comments, because it was delayed, so the company said, look, we'll create more cards for the game as an apology. And I thought, that's great. I'm getting free content for a game. I'm not bothered if it's delayed for 2 years. Then we got the game, perfectly fine, just 2 years later than it should have arrived. But the disgust by a lot of the community, and I was thinking, there's no need for some of those comments. They've guaranteed it's coming. It's just delayed because of manufacturing processes. But also, you've got to understand, we've just come out in the midst of a pandemic, so there's going to be a delay in everything, so you have to expect that. And the fact they're giving you free content, you say, didn't have to do that. It should be a gratitude or thank you. Great, and getting lots of free new cards no one else has got. That's fantastic. I can enjoy more content out of the game when it arrives. But these things happen, and I think there's a few exceptions when people don't receive the game for various different reasons, but they're far and few between. In case you're watching us concerned, a bit back in Kickstarter, there's nothing wrong. There is a risk, but the risk is low in the board game industry, thankfully. So
yeah,
we will wait and see what happens in the future with that. So let's move into our next question. So we've got 2 more to go. So number 8, I think we're in number 8. Yes, we are. Yeah, I've done my maths right. So an agree or disagree question. So game designers and companies need to do more to cater for those who are colorblind.
Well, I'm not colorblind, so I don't know if they're not doing enough. But yeah, they should always be mindful of it, of course. And usually it really doesn't mean much for the game. I think they should be mindful about it. I don't know if they should do more in general. I don't know how big of the problem is for those with those disabilities. But yeah, I think sometimes I forget about it myself, but I'm not a publisher, but I'm a game designer. So I know I could do more for it. So I guess I could say yes.
Yeah, because I was actually on a podcast about it. So I wrote a blog, which people can check out on Pixie Games. So I still got the blog up there. I wrote a huge article on colour blindness, and I put together a design for game designers. Basically, it's a table that shows you what colours, which colours. So you don't have to research it. It's all there. And then you just look at it and go, right, these are the colours I'm using. I have to be careful with these 2 colours because X amount of the population are colourblind with red and black, for example, green and blue, and those types of colours, because they're quite common colour blindness. And it's quite fascinating. I mean, look at the data. There's actually a lot of people who are colourblind. There's more males that are colourblind than females, statistically, which is quite interesting. But of course, we wouldn't recommend anyone play Sagrada who are colourblind, because that'd be a horrendous experience. But I'm sure there's little tweaks. It's just that mindfulness, isn't it? That, you know, red and black are not a great combination. Blue and green's not a great combination unless it's extremely bright green or really dark kind of blue purple colour, so it distinguishes. But yeah, there are free guides out there for people to use to help them. But it's not always possible, especially when you've got lots of components. You can't get it completely colourblind friendly for every single type of colourblindness. It's impossible, but at least the most common ones, it is possible. So I'm sure people got different opinions on that. But I think, you know, like you say, we can all do a little bit towards helping that can widen the audience for getting games out there to everyone on the table. But we'll see whether we can actually progress with that in the future so that it becomes a common practice with board game designs. So let's move into our next question. Ollie, we're on to number 9. So 2 more to go. And our next one is, what phrase comes to mind? You're having a lot of these. When someone says, I hate it when people don't get the rules. As a disgruntled, grumpy individual.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, whatever the reason is, it's not great when somebody don't get the rules right. But if it's because they don't pay attention or the rules are poorly written, I mean, I hate it of course, because it ruins the game session. So I agree with that. Of course, if it's my game, I will desperately try to look into if it's something I can do about it or should have done about it. And if we're playing another designer's game and we don't get the rules, or we'll take our time to try and solve it, probably on Board Game Geek, right? But yeah, I do hate it because I'm a bit of a rules lawyer myself. I don't think we should wing it. Of course, not in my own games, unless we're still prototyping and changing stuff. But I want to play by the rules as designed. I don't want to get stuck in it. But it can be a frustrating experience, of course. But if it's like, I hate it when somebody else around the table doesn't get the rules, well, you have to be patient, I guess. And as long as they're not sitting with their phones and not paying attention, I mean, then you just have to explain them the rules. Usually, it's only like one person reading the rules anyway, right? So it will be their job to like brief the rest of the table properly.
Yeah. And I suppose, you know, if the rules are clearly written, it helps, isn't it, for people to understand the rules. And I've read some rule books where you can clearly tell they have not got someone to check those rules properly, or at least got a professional to revise the rules to make sure it's clear. I can think of one called Castaways, an old board game. I actually love the board game. Rule book is horrendous to get through, and there's important points that aren't clearly highlighted. That's mashed in with other sentences. So you know the clarity there. Although it's there, it's hard to pick it out. At a glance, you have to read the whole entire rule book again. And on Board Game Geek, people have been helpful to put a little cheat sheet up to say, you know, these are the really important parts of the rules you need to know, because nobody wants to spend another 3 hours reading that rule book. So that there are some caveats to it where, you know, that frustration comes in. You can understand why people might not get the rules if it's not clear in the rule book. A simple fix is, well, you pay someone to revise that rule book and make sure it's written clearly and properly to an audience that everyone can understand and digest.
Yeah.
But hopefully we don't run into that problem too many times. And let's move in to our last question, Ollie. And the last one is an agree or disagree statement. So micro, so as in microcosmos, that type of game, or tiny, as in tiny epic board games. You've got micro, really small. You've got tiny epic, so tiny games. Those board games that copy bigger games to make them accessible and travelable, so you can take them with you in your travels, is a great concept. So tiny epic games is a good example of that, where they're based on larger games, made into a much smaller box. Do you agree that that's a great concept?
Oh, that's a good question. I only own one of the Tiny Epic games, which is the pirate one. I can't remember the exact name. I think it's a great concept for the travel reasons. Uh, but if I have the room and time for it, I would rather play it as a big game because have the components spread out and dominate the table. But I think that's very subjective. One of my favorite games is Conquest of the Empire, the second edition, where the board is way too big. It has at least half a square meter that's not used for anything, but it just fits the theme so good because everybody is like going to war to be the new Caesar, and you're just trying to conquer the entirety of Europe and a part of Africa as well. And it has to be grandiose. I mean, I would never play that as a tiny epic. That would be so weird. It has to look overly produced. But for traveling reasons, I mean, it's great. I mean, the concept is great in that way, and the gameplay is pretty good in that tiny epic series, right? So yeah, I mostly agree with that.
Yeah, I've got I actually own Microcosmos. I've got about 4 of the Tiny Epics. I love Tiny Epic Galaxies. You know, that's the type of game I would take in my travels because it's easy to learn, easy to play, it's quick, doesn't take too long. You can introduce new players to it relatively quickly and easily to get into the game, and it's really compact. The other 10 epic games are fine and are fairly straightforward, but although if you haven't played them for a while, you reread the rule book again, you just can't remember all the little rules. So I've got a few of them, they are good, but I like you, I prefer the kind of bigger, grander scale of that type of game, where it's a space type game or a pirate type game, but they do a good job. You know, one of my favorite I really like is Tiny Epic Dinosaurs. I think they've done a great job of that. Would I rather play a bigger dinosaur game? Yes, I would. But then again, you don't want to be sticking that into your suitcase when you're traveling. So it's a great concept. I do agree. They've done a great job in the series with that. So that brings us to the end, Ollie, and I think it'd be great to see what comes out in the future from you in terms of game designs. Is there anything planned? You got anything in the pipeline?
Yes. Unfortunately, can't speak much about any of it, right? That's the publisher's prerogative, right? To announce when they can, and often also I really don't know until it's basically going to the factories, because I have had contracts like we signed it and we were going well away with it, and then something happened and I couldn't do the games anyway. So I'm not even sure myself what is coming out, but I can say that I'm working on a lot of thematic stuff. Still working with Mood Publishing. We did Deep Rock Galactic recently. Now we're working on other exciting stuff, and I'm still working with Grey Fox Games. We're still with whom I did Champions of Midgard, and I'm talking to new publishers about new exciting projects they have, and I have some older games that they're looking into as well. So lots of stuff coming, yeah, and lots of interesting thematic stuff, I think. So hopefully soon, but of course we had the major milestone with Deep Rock Galactic, and it's 2 expansions we just fairly recently successfully kickstarted. So there's that goal line we just finished. So of course there's, and also with Mood Publishing we did the Battle of Gods, and we are looking into, I can reveal, we are looking into more expansions for that. It already had 2 expansions with 2 new gods, 2 new champions you can play. And of course we are looking into should we do more of those. So hopefully something will happen in 2024, since the year only started. But I don't even know in what order yet it will happen.
Well, we will wait and see. I'm sure some people out there will be looking forward to seeing what games are coming out, Ollie. And yeah, I'd like to thank you for jumping on the show again. And this is obviously going to be our final series of Under the Meeple Lights. So if you haven't checked the others, please go to the playlist. And also please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like, a thumbs up, if you could please. And let us know in the comments down below any particular questions you want to give me your viewpoints on as well. It'd be great to hear from you. And that brings us to the end now. So I'd like to thank everyone for watching. And until next time, take care. Bye for now.
Bye.